speaking English perfectly is an illusion. And so many struggling English students are stuck with their English fluency because of this illusion. I'm even going to pluck up the courage and say perfection, wanting to do everything perfectly, leads to mediocrity and below average results. Having speaking English perfectly as a goal, speaking like a native speaker, to speak this ideal version of English that no one speaks, could seriously damage not just your confidence but your progress with learning English and the way you look at yourself as an English learner. Show me anyone who speaks perfect grammar, who always chooses the perfect words and pronounces every single word perfectly, even in their first language. Or if you often get frustrated about not understanding everything the characters are saying in a movie you're watching or a podcast you're listening to, and that's why you don't take off the subtitles even for just 5 or 10 minutes just to practice your listening skills, is that how babies are learning to speak their first language? By wanting to understand everything their parents are saying. Here's your permission slip, and I know this is not a permission slip, this is a receipt from a convenience store I've just been to here in Tokyo. But here's a permission slip for you to stop trying to be so perfect and just to be, I don't know, you. Because you can always be perfect at being you, can't you? And I'm not speaking from the high heavens as somebody who's reached perfect imperfection. The strive for perfection affects all of us. Someone who spent 12, 13 years in school, always being at the top of the class, always wanted to have as much to do after school as well, as many certificates as I needed. I've still been battling with my perfectionist thoughts, insecurity, imposter syndrome, procrastination, especially when it comes to my business. Not much about the languages I learned. Here's the thing, your progress with learning to speak English fluently, learning to understand fast English speakers from real authentic materials or real conversations, remembering grammar and vocabulary so that you can confidently use it in conversations you're having, will depend on this one thing. What you get your satisfaction from as you're learning, from doing everything perfectly or from showing up and making progress. And if you want to make much faster progress with your English fluency, because you could literally become much more fluent in the next 1 to 2 years with the right strategies and with the right mindset, so you don't give up when things, especially things about your life, are starting to get more difficult, and enjoy the whole process of learning without all the headaches, without worrying, the complaints about not making progress, the disappointments, watch this video till the end. Hey English learner, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chubby. I'm an English fluency, learning and language anxiety coach, someone who used to be an extreme perfectionist and an overachiever. And if you want to get some inspiration on how you can overcome the same, you can check out these 2 videos I made especially for people who are struggling with their perfectionism, their fear of making mistakes, and their insecurities. This is a channel for serious English learners who want to learn how to make vocabulary more memorable and how to speak English more freely, comfortably and confidently with the help of focusing on their listening skills and their spoken interaction. So if these are topics that you're interested in, anything connected to fluency, confidence, speaking, listening, or vocabulary, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you get my weekly updates, all kinds of short and long form videos about these topics. Most students only feel proud of themselves, only celebrate when they do something extremely well about their English, when they have perfectly expressed themselves, when they've understood everything in a podcast episode they were listening to, or when they perfectly remember every single word. How realistic is this? I'm sure you too, just like everyone else, we've gone through more than a decade of school, traditional education. And most of us study English as a subject, and English students are stuck with their English fluency because of this, because it's actually not English fluency that we study, it's English grammar, English translation, and memorizing English words. Chances are you're out of school. You're a responsible adult who wants to speak English fluently, communicate effectively, so you could walk into any conversation feeling confident, knowing what to say, and communicating clearly exactly what you mean. The truth is, this isn't what school was meant to prepare you for. So we're using the same old school, ineffective, traditional ways of studying English as a subject. The same strategies, the same kind of thinking, the same mindset help us achieve different results. And if you don't want to keep studying English like a high school student, make sure you check out these 2 videos that I made to help you understand the difference between what perfectionist struggling English students choose to do whose progress is extremely slow, sometimes zero when it comes to their fluency, and what effective, successful English communicators choose to do that helps them make much faster progress, that helps them learn English without all the headaches and speak English fluently. Recently, as I was scrolling through TikTok, because all of us are doing this, no shame, I've come across this beautiful quote that says, "You didn't come here to accomplish, you came here to experience." And this couldn't sum up more what successful English students do when it comes to improving their English fluency. There was a time you were happily running to your mum, bursting with pride, showing her the beautiful drawings you made. Was that drawing perfect? And did you care if other kids' drawings were better than your drawing? If you were proud of yourself and your work, the things you put out there back then, because you were looking at that as part of a process, you knew that the more you practice, the better you get. What happened to us adults? I tell you what happened. School happened, and English students are stuck with their English fluency because of this, because they can't seem to break out of their school mindset. First of all, school makes us all think that we are supposed to compare ourselves to each other when you have different skills from the skills that I have, and you have different strengths from the strengths that I have. Struggling English students spend their whole life thinking that somebody is going to give them a score on the way they communicate in English, that they will have to understand every single word that they listen to on a movie they're watching, so they don't switch off the subtitles even for 5 or 10 minutes, and then they complain that they can't understand fast English speakers. And they're either terrified of making mistakes, so many times they don't even speak at all, or they don't take risks, especially when it comes to students above the intermediate level, where taking risks is an important part of making huge progress to get out of that plateau, because they always think that someone's gonna come and take away some points from them because of their performance if they make a mistake or mispronounce words. Now, if we weren't born with this kind of thinking, if kids are running around making mistakes, not caring about what other kids are doing or how better they are doing than them, that means we were taught this in school, which means, especially if we are out of school, we can unlearn it. And actually, the first big module inside my coaching program that helps my students make massive progress with their English fluency is all about unlearning the shit that society and school taught us about making progress. Because if you think about this, all of the keywords that I was using in the last couple of sentences I was sharing with you have got something to do with accomplishment, school, or results. What do you think would happen if kids were learning to speak their first language, always thinking that they have to understand every single word their parents are telling them, if they weren't allowed to make mistakes because they were always thinking somebody's gonna come and make fun of them, criticize them for the mistakes they make, or if they always kept comparing themselves to other kids and they cared about how other kids are speaking their first language better than they do? Would they ever learn to speak their first language fluently? And I perfectly understand that changing the way you look at your English fluency isn't easy, especially as an adult living in this perfectionist society that is extremely judgmental. If it was easy, wouldn't everyone be speaking English fluently and confidently at C2 proficient levels? But I'm still going to do my best to propose to you another way of looking at fluency that will help you save time, a lot of energy, and help you make much faster progress without all those headaches, complaints, disappointments, that will help you get access to all those opportunities that speaking English fluently can give you. And that's the keyword I want you to focus on: progress. And to me, progress is the exact opposite of perfection. So first of all, let's rewrite officially the famous saying, practice makes perfect, to practice makes progress. Instead of looking at speaking English as a performance act that you will be evaluated on, start looking at your English speaking skills as a process, which means start where you are and start using what you've already practiced and what you've already learned. Whether it's elementary, intermediate, or advanced level, I'm gonna leave up here a list of different ways you could practice communicating with other people, and practice regularly what you've learned. And don't expect to say things that you haven't practiced, reviewed, listened to, or read enough times. Struggling English students, for example, choose to say that they can't speak English fluently when I'm absolutely sure that's not true, because they could say hello, they could say good morning, they can maybe say things like I like teddy bears. So what they actually mean is that they can't speak English as fluently as they can their first language. But without much practice, without laying down the foundations, it's like wanting to start to build a townhouse from the roof. Is that even possible? Successful English communicators, on the other hand, make super fast progress with their English fluency because they choose to focus on having conversations as part of the process. Because they know that the more they practice, the better they get, and they are not expected to give a political speech in front of 5 million people in a stadium. I don't think there's even a stadium that could house 5 million people, so let's just say 50,000. We just have to start where we are and put ourselves out there, get out of our comfort zone, instead of imposing these unrealistic expectations on ourselves. They simply focus on getting 1% better with every single practice. Even elementary students can start talking about their daily routine, making appointments, and once they lay down the foundations, they could graduate to intermediate level, where you can practice how to express your opinion, how to invite other people into a conversation, how to keep a conversation going, and then baby step by baby step, they would eventually take their English up a notch until they are able to do things like speculating, resolving conflicts, getting a bit deeper about their emotions, or managing fast-paced conversations which are more advanced or proficient communicative skills. How often do you worry about forgetting words as you're having conversations? When you deep down know that you know that word, you've seen this 100 times, but for the life of you, you just can't seem to say it. It doesn't come to mind. How do you feel? For school tests, we needed to know all the words to get the highest score possible, until we took the test, and then we probably forgot them in less than 24 hours. We didn't worry about that at that time when we forgot them after taking the test. I always look at learning vocabulary like taking care of a garden, and I talk more about this and the analogy in this video that I've already made before. But eventually, and this is what helps my students remember vocabulary in the long term and become much more fluent and confident as well, because when you know the vocabulary, when you can access that vocabulary, you also become much more confident in speaking English. We focus on automatizing the vocabulary that we are practicing. And until it becomes automatic, we need to keep reviewing vocabulary in context, especially in conversations with other people. There is nothing wrong with forgetting vocabulary. Forgetting vocabulary is part of the process of learning, and it's just like when it comes to a garden, where you can't expect every plant to grow at the same pace. There are going to be plants that are growing super fast and other plants not even showing any sign of growth. You're not getting impatient about what that one plant is growing much slower, right? You can always see forgetting vocabulary as a sign that maybe you haven't learned that vocabulary well enough, or it's time to go back to it and review it again. So whenever my students are coming to me with these problems and issues, I always redirect them to keep on practicing with potentially much more effective ways of learning, so they could remember the vocabulary much easier. Again, struggling English students choose to expect to remember every single word that they've seen, even the words they've only seen or heard once, while successful English communicators look at forgetting words as an integral part of learning to strengthen those neural pathways in the brain to remember them better. Based on everything you've heard in this video, how do you think you will be enjoying the process of learning and making much faster progress with your English fluency, and not coming up against those self-imposed difficulties and obstacles? If you choose to celebrate speaking perfectly, performing perfectly in everything you do about learning English, remembering everything, which will only lead to you being so terrified of making mistakes or taking risks and use new vocabulary or grammar structures in front of other people, that you will either not take consistent action or feel so disappointed that you would give up too soon. or if you choose to celebrate from this day, from today, just showing up, having a conversation to the best of your ability, focusing on understanding as much as you can in whatever you're listening to, reading or watching in English, reviewing the vocabulary and the grammar that you want to use in your conversations regularly, and as a result, this way, finding a much more sustainable way to keep going, because you know that every time you do things, you take action, whether it's about your listening, remembering vocabulary, or having conversations, you will always get 1% better. And every time you listen to a podcast, whether it's for 1 minute or 10 minutes, you will get one baby step closer to understanding almost all of it. The choice, as with everything in life, is always yours. And I really hope that this video helped you understand more about how incredibly unhealthy, damaging and toxic it is for all of us to expect to do things perfectly in a language that we are just learning, when none of us are perfect and none of us have to be. And take this from someone who's had years of struggling with this issue. You're more than welcome to join my free English community, Build Your Fluency, for serious English learners, where you can practice having conversations with other people, get to know more about what exactly you need to focus on when it comes to improving your listening skills, understanding fast English speakers, improving your pronunciation or remembering vocabulary, and just have fun with people who are in the same shoes as you are. Just click the first link in the description below and join us. I know this topic is a hard one for all of us to swallow, but what is your takeaway from this video? In what areas of your English learning do you think you've been holding yourself back because you wanted to do it perfectly? Your speaking skills? Is it watching parts of a movie without subtitles so you can improve your listening skills? Or perhaps your learning habits? Let me know in the comments.